Hey, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
So we are finishing up something we started last episode.
That ran too long.
We didn't intend to do that, but we're going to split this in two parts. We may not even call it part one and part two. I might just give it like the qualitative name of perceiving and judging. Anyway, what are we doing today? We're picking up from a concept we laid down last episode. This idea. So first of all, we're tuned into personality. Clearly, personality hacker. And we're talking about the cognitive functions of personality. So the Jungian cognitive functions, Carl Jung's cognitive functions of personality. These are the building blocks of what makes you, or me and ENFP, you and ENTP, your personality type as you're listening. Those four letters point to the cognitive functions. This is how our mind learns information, perceives our world, makes decisions, and judges criteria about that information to do something about it.
And if you want more context, you can listen to the last episode because we've laid it out.
That's also a great idea.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about that. As we look at the functions, we talked about the radical nature of those functions, not radical in protest radical, like, you know, that kind of a radical.
Or radicalized.
We're talking about the fundamentals of the actual definition of the word radical means like down to the root of it, right? The core of it, the fundamentals of it. So we're talking about the functions, even though there's 8. The reason there's 8 is there's a introverted and extroverted attitude of each of the functions. So we could actually just talk about it in 4 sets of sensing. There's an extroverted attunement of sensing, introverted attunement of sensing, intuition, extroverted, introverted, thinking, feeling. You can do that for all of them. Introverted, extroverted attitudes of each of those. But if we just said on the last episode we did this, let's just talk about sensing. What is sensing doing? And then we made the distinction between, okay, there's a different quality of sensing when it's being extroverted, we call that sensation, or introverted, we call that memory, right? There's a qualitative nature. We talked about the outer version or expression or attitude of that function is the lived experience of sensing, right? It's how we live our sensing experience in the here and now, the present moment. I'm literally doing this thing in this moment. And the introverted attitude of that sensing would be the processing of the sensing that I've already had. So one is lived, the extroverted attitude is lived. The introverted attitude needs to be processed. And then we talked about the measurement of what it means to fully live this or fully process this. We talked about those qualitatively. We went through the sensing, introvert, extrovert, and we went through intuition, which is pattern recognition, imagination, speculation, simulation, extroverted, introvert. We gave the qualitative measurements for that. And then we ran out of time, or we decided to run out of time and say, let's do this in part 2 or the next episode.
Well, we got chatty.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about thinking and feeling in its most radical, fundamental definition or viewpoint. And then its attitudinal nature of introverted, extroverted feeling and thinking the same way. And these are judging functions. These are the way we judge or make determination. We decide what we're going to do in the world. Not judgment like I'm judgmental, but judgment in that I'm going to make a judgment on what I should actually implement, do, or execute on. So let's get into this. By the way, did I do a pretty good job of summarizing? Do you have anything else to add qualitatively, Antonia, to that summarization?
No, I think that's good. Just to mention that it's a framework that I've been playing around with, and you said it, but I will repeat it because I think it's sort of the reason why we're recording this 2-part series or 2-part. I guess you could call it a series if it's only 2. That the framework is all of the extroverted expressions are about living them in real time.
Yeah.
And so, or in life. And so when you live something, when you are engaged with the outside world, there are rules to that. There are quote unquote rules of engagement. You have to consider time because time lives outside of us. So anytime we're living something, we are now beholden to a timeline. We also are engaging and interacting with other humans. And so we influence them and they influence us. And that's part of living. There are certain limitations, right? We have to obey things like the law of gravity and other limitations in the physical realm. So when we say that these are lived, what we're saying is that they are expressed outwardly and engaging with life that imposes upon it certain limitations. When you are processing or going inward, you're introverting something, you don't have those same laws. You don't have those same rules. There is a timelessness about the inner space. In fact, in the podcast that we did a few years ago called Cognitive Functions in Time, we made an argument that the inner space is marked by time traveling. We can visit the present moment, we can visit the past, and we can visit the future in a 60-second span. So there's a lot less limitations when we are processing something. And it allows for more carefulness. It allows for more, more time to be poured into something. It allows for a little bit of magic when we're processing the same function. So if all the extroverted functions are living these functions, or the extroverted expression is living them, and the introverted expression is processing them, then they're by definition going to take on different qualitative natures because they're playing by different sets of rules.
Yes. So again, why this is important is sometimes people, and we talked about this in the last episode, sometimes people have a challenging time knowing which energy they're in, right? I think you gave, I forget the exact example, but something that's happening, a cause, that's what it was, a crusade that I'm on. I feel strongly, I feel convicted about something. One could say, wow, a strong conviction is a feeling. It's a strong introverted feeling moment of authenticity. And we'll get into introverted feeling here in a moment. And then if I take that cause, that really strong conviction I have, and I start to organize people in the outer world based on that conviction, well, I'm still acting upon that conviction, living it out in the world. Am I still in the energy of introverted feeling or authenticity, even though I'm talking to people and I'm organizing things out here and I'm getting coalitions together to implement the conviction I have in the inner world? Am I now in the extroverted space and I'm not in that introverted space? And sometimes is it one or the other? Is it both? How do we think about that as the function of feeling? Because there's an attitude of extroversion or introversion. Which way is the feeling pointed? It's a little bit of both. We all have proclivities toward one or the other based on our personality type. That's what personality type lends us to understand, is it points to which one I'm using, which version. The flavor I lend to is going to be, I'm going to start with introverted feeling or authenticity, and then it will move outward, not outward with extroverted feeling harmony to move inward. So sometimes it's like, well, which energy am I in? So that's one of the reasons we're also talking about this, is helping us diagnose the energy we're in when we're expressing something or doing something in the world. But also I think there's an opportunity here to tune into more living if we're a person that does too much processing. Like, we have a proclivity to process a lot. Maybe introverts lend this way more, right? Because it makes sense to them. Well, there's more living to be had potentially to expand the territory of the processing you're doing. Or somebody like myself who probably needs to slow down and do more processing. I'm very extroverted. I always want to move and do things and constantly be, patterning and doing stuff in the outer world. Well, sometimes I need to slow down and spend some time processing. So it's also an avenue for growth as well.
Yeah. And it gives us a formula for what aren't we doing and what is waiting for us to do it.
Yeah.
So if there is processing we need to do about, say, our past, there's some introverted sensing processing experiences. Now, we talked about how you don't just process your own experiences with this function. You also can process your culture's experiences or other people's experiences.
Yeah.
But usually the ones that are hanging out waiting for us to process them are our own personal experiences. And if you're not doing that, then you're missing the gift of resolution, because when we do a full process of that function, that's what is on the other side, is a resolution. It's like the active version of acceptance. So each one of these functions comes with a gift. And understanding that if we are a person who is inclined to be living, right, we're more extroverted, and so we have a tendency to do more living, then there's probably processing work that's waiting for us to do. And the reverse is also true. If we're a person who tends to process, well, we might be covering the same territory, and there might be some living that we need to do.
So again, we went into a lot of preamble and setup in the last episode. I don't want to review or go through every single thing we said on that show, because it'll just be redundant. So if you haven't heard the last episode, I would recommend going back and listening to that before this one, because we're going to lay down some foundational truths and some things that we're looking to that we are going to piggyback off on this episode. Let's talk about thinking at the start. So obviously we have two functions here: extroverted thinking effectiveness, introverted thinking accuracy. But we're going to just push those away for a second. Talk about thinking. There's just the process of thinking. And this is a judgment decision-making process. We're using thinking criteria to decide what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about just thinking in its radical form, but then we can talk about it, how it's expressed with its attitude, introverted, extroverted.
Right. So thinking is decision-making based on what is true and factual and makes sense and solves a problem. So if you look at these functions as they evolved to serve a purpose, the sensing function evolved to serve the purpose of being able to interact with to have an experience, to understand it, and then to understand who we are based on those experiences. Intuition evolved so that we weren't limited by what we could see. We are also able to imagine and pattern and abstract. And that's very helpful when it comes to tool building and future pacing and making plans, right? And being able to behave in a way that falls outside of our usual modality. So there's a lot of benefits to both of those functions.
In a way, our intuition might make us human. It's where we apply meaning. And I think we're the only animals that we know of that can make meaning in language in the way that we do.
In the way that we do, absolutely. Yep. So when you go into the judging functions, well, what is the facility of thinking? And I would argue that it is problem solving. Right? There's a lot of problems to solve. There are a lot of things that are challenges in the world. And if you don't apply good reason and logic to them, then you end up recovering territory over and over and not coming to some sort of, effective solution. So thinking helps us solve problems, and it also helps us form opinions. It helps us determine the best course of action that allows us to do hard things. If you remove the human component, right? Like if you over focus, and we'll talk about feeling in a moment, but if you over focus on just the human, runoff, or like how humans are going to react and respond to something, you create a lot of limitations in what you allow yourself to do. A lot of times the best solution is the one that ignores human feelings. It's the one that we all need to just sort of grit our teeth and shore up our reserves and just go do it anyway. So thinking helps us solve problems, and it helps us get to the other side of challenges that otherwise we'd get stuck in over and over. When you start applying this to the outside world, so the extroverted version of it, we call it effectiveness. Now we are living thinking. So what does it mean to live thinking? Well, it means to take problem solving and apply it to the outside world. Now, once we do that, again, we're in the realm of a world that has rules. And one of those rules is that everything lives on a timeline. One of those rules is that resources are not limitless. One of those rules is that we have impacts that have far-reaching consequences. And one of those rules is that most things can't happen immediately. They have to happen through progress over time. And so you gather resources together, you build things, you see progress. The higher quality the item is that you built, the longer it will last. The faster you build something, the faster you can trade it. That if you pull people together to work on something, they'll want to be compensated for their efforts. That when you focus on one project, there's opportunity cost for another project. Yeah. So there's a bunch of rules that get applied to when we apply thinking to the outside world, to when we live it.
And when we make something, the moment it's made, it starts to break down and deteriorate. There's the second law of thermodynamics that's going to break it down over time, right? And so we also know that something has to be maintained and continually improved upon or managed as it goes on a timeline.
And so as one lives thinking and is in this realm of solving problems in the outside world through effective resource management, certain things become obvious, like the need to build systems for maintenance, or the need to build systems to replicate something that you've just created. If you want to be able to get the results, if you want to maximize your time and effort, when you figured out how to do something, you'll apply that same thinking to the next project, or to replicating it over and over again. If you built something that's particularly effective, but it's only yours and you don't know how to do it again, nobody else can benefit from it. You can't sell it. You can't maximize the sort of the wattage that went into building or creating this thing. So systems become pretty obvious at a certain point where you're like, well, let's systematize how we did this originally.
Yeah.
And again,
like the math in a bridge, like the mathematics that it takes to structurally support like vehicles or trains on a bridge over a river somebody had to sit down and figure all that math out and process it all and figure it all out. And then eventually you apply it and you test it. Okay, it worked. Well, now we know it works. We don't have to go and figure it out anymore. We just can replicate that over and over and over again and save ourselves tons of time and energy. Like we can use the implication or the implementation of it and the results of that as the metric to say that passed the criteria in the outer world. It works. Pass fail criteria. Let's keep applying it.
Yeah. And that thinking has, well, you never truly solve problems. You only trade them. So the goal is to trade up. And while one could argue that as humans, the ways that we chose to solve problems with extroverted thinking has created other problems, the truth is that we get to say that from the comfort of air-conditioned homes, right?
Yeah.
Now, not everybody is in an air-conditioned home, but there is a lot of technology that has been created that potentially makes people's lives very easy compared to the lives of the past. So problem solving or thinking applied to the outside world or living takes on certain qualities and characteristics, but it is limited. It's limited by time. It's limited by sequencing, right? You have to do one thing after another. It's limited by resource. It's limited by human energy. And so it's going to encourage maximizing all of those things to have the most results you can have from those resources.
So if you contrast that with the other side of thinking, the introverted attitude of thinking, accuracy, it's not this way. Accuracy doesn't, like introverted thinking doesn't have to be something that plays out in the outer world. It lives in the inner thinking space. There's not as many external rules put upon this process.
Right. Yeah. In fact, it gets to live in a space that's timeless. So it becomes a lot more theoretical. It's problem solving and looking at the concepts of impact and the concepts of, basically everything that gets lived. But it's doing so in a space that it gets to spend as much time as it wants to process all of it. And it ends up becoming extremely subjective. The lived experience of thinking has to interface with other people. And so it becomes refined through other people's feedback. It influences people and people influence it, meaning that if you overwork people and you don't give them enough, compensation for that, you're going to get outer world feedback. If you try to build something on top of somebody else's land, you're going to get outer world feedback.
Yeah.
If you say things with candor, right, and communicate something that you like that makes sense to you, and you do it in a way that's deeply offensive, you're going to get outer world feedback.
Yeah.
So there's a benefit to extroverting it, is that there's a sense of refinement, but there's also a limitation that you're constantly having to account for that feedback.
Yeah.
When you go introverted, you don't have to account for that feedback. The only feedback is your own sense of logic. It's only what your own inner voices that are having internal dialogue or trying to refine it inside of yourself.
It's not just people though in the outer world. I just want to make sure we know this note. It's anything extroverted can calibrate extroverted thinking. In other words, like the weather or like, again, physics. It's not just people not wanting to build on their land. It could be like the land is quicksand and you can't build on here because the land itself won't allow you to build on it.
Oh, I cut down all the trees and it takes like 50 to 100 years for them to grow again and I'll be dead by then.
So you couched it in people, but there's
Right.
other feedback you're also getting in the external world as well.
You get it. Yeah, exactly. So there's a limitation that helps the lived part pick up certain skills. I would argue that proactivity ends up becoming a feature or a marker of extroverted thinking or effectiveness because it understands the benefit of planning ahead, of proactively gathering these resources before the moment in which you need the thing to happen. Because sometimes you can't predict everything. And by the time you get there, you've run out of time. You've run out of the resource of time. So it ends up becoming quite proactive. When you bring it inside, when you introvert it, now you're processing thinking, you're processing problem solving, you're processing thoughts, you're processing what makes sense and what's true, but you don't have the limitation of time and space. You get to basically think about it however you want to. And what's interesting is that we've built technologies that almost help people understand conceptually what it must look like to experience introverted thinking as, say, a TP type, which is like movies like Minority Report. there is technology and they're building it now, right? With like Apple Vision Pro and other elements like that, which is a projection of a bunch of data points and being able to move them around quickly. Now, Minority Report, if you've ever seen the movie, it's a technology that's burgeoning, but it's grabbing a bunch of data points and information, and then the user is able to move it around very quickly. It's a projection, right? It's like lasers. It's not like actual material. And so there's no limitation of actual material weighing you down. In order to move those data points, if they were put on maybe like, say, little pieces of paper, or if they were like stapled to something, or like maybe even put on a whiteboard, you'd have to at least, erase it and then write it again on the whiteboard, which would take time. But you don't have to do that internally. You just get to organize that information as quickly as you want to. So the limitation is that you're not vetting your ideas through the lens of reality as much, unless you're careful. The benefit is that you can process a lot more information at the same time because you don't have a limitation on resource.
This makes me think of DAOs in the crypto space. Actually, an accuracy introverted thinking user brought this to me. And now I know what they are, but it's decentralized autonomous organization, I think is what it stands for. I might have that specific wrong, but I think it is. Basically what it is it's like an anonymous governance organization over a collective of people. It feels like a very introverted thinking concept. It's like this would be utopia if like the collective on the blockchain, for example, could just make the decisions in governance. People's emotions and dirtiness wouldn't be in it, right? Now, this still has to be tested to play out in the real world. We don't know if this will work or not, but it's theoretical that if we have it decentralized, it's autonomous, and it's organizing things in governance, it should work, right? That's a theory right now that people are playing with, and they're testing it in the crypto space, in the blockchain space. Again, I don't know all the details. Smarter people than me know all the details, but I know enough to know it's theoretical now, and we're not sure it's going to actually play out.
Right.
But in theory, it sounds like it will. It sounds like it should be a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about. That inside that space, you can say, yeah, that would work out really well, right? And you can just play with the concept. But in the real world, we're going to see the results over time.
Thoughts are always more elegant inside of us than they are when they play out in real life.
Yeah.
Which is why extroverted thinking understands the concept of acceptable spillage, and introverted thinking has a hard time with that. And like it's because in theory, you don't have to give up anything. In theory, you can have it all work out.
It could be perfect.
It can be perfect. Right?
Perfectly efficient.
Right. And then introverted thinking gets salty when the outside world imposes, reality upon it, and now it gets messy. And introverted thinking, if it's not careful, will blame the outside world for messing up its beautiful theory. And that's actually an unsophisticated version of introverted thinking, because introverted thinking is best processed when it has enough extroverted examples or enough experience in the outside world to temper it. So, as we mentioned before, there are markers for whether or not you're doing this thing well. For extroverted thinking or effectiveness, it's progress. That's how you know that you're truly living thinking, is that you're making progress, that you're having an impact, like especially the impact you wanted to have. That's living your thinking, right? You're having the impact, you're problem solving in the outside world. And I suspect that articulation and communication is the province of both sides of thinking, but the extroverted version prefers candor. It is good at explaining the things that need to be explained in order for action to be taken. So you know that you're using this function, you're living this function when you're able to communicate things to other people to help give them direction on what they need to do, and that you're able to communicate with candor. So those are markers that you're not leaving money on the table with this function.
Yeah.
For the introverted version, so there's a very important phrase, it's kind of like a little axiom, that I think is maybe one of the most important phrases for people who use introverted thinking as a strength, but it actually is important for everybody. And it's the phrase, don't believe everything you think. So processing thought means getting beyond the initial moment of what makes sense to you. So just like we talked about with introverted sensing in the last episode, that a memory might impose itself on you, or a reminiscence, or something that is in the realm of an experience from the past. It might impose itself on you, and the fact that it like blurped up, that's the beginning of it. Now, people who don't do introverted sensing or refuse to do it, they sort it either with I'm never going to think about it again, or I'm going to try to not think about it again, or they sort it and that it overwhelms them and it's all they do is just think about this thing and they're trapped by it. Both of those are symbols that you're not doing full processing. And with intuition, it's similar. Like when an insight comes up, that's the beginning of the process. It's not the conclusion. You take your insight, you take your aha, your sort of that moment of an epiphany, and then you process it enough to understand direction from it, right? It will give you a direction to go. It will allow you to run simulations or shift perspectives enough to understand like how should I be using this information to effectively pull me into the future. For introverted thinking, when something feels like an opinion, right? This is my opinion on this. That's the beginning of processing. It's not the conclusion. So an opinion should always be, for true introverted thinking processing, an opinion should be sort of the moment that you now realize you have thought labor. And that is you dive deep underneath the opinion, you question the opinion, you argue with yourself, both sides. You take the opposing side and you do what we're called steel manning it. We did a whole episode on what steel manning looks like. I highly recommend listening to it. So you find reasons why the opposing opinion has strengths to it as well. You question the premise of it. You remove your personal biases. And on the other side of full processing of introverted thinking, you have clarity. Now, the reason why I think clarity is such a good word is because it's like a clear window. When people have opinions and they haven't done this full introverted thinking processing, when you ask them to share their opinion, well, sometimes they've done all the thinking, but they're not a person who has practiced articulation. So it takes them a while to explain it. That's sufficient. That's okay. Even if it takes a little while for you to explain it, that's okay. You've done the full processing. But if you can't explain it, if you haven't gone through the math, if you don't have basically the algorithm or the formula for why this thing is your opinion and it makes sense, and a person pushes back and you don't have something to say to it about it, then you do not have clarity, right? There's a fogginess to it. There's like almost like water that has like cloudy. It's like cloudy water. So full introverted thinking processing means getting to a point where all of that has settled and you can like see through the water. You have clarity. You can defend your positions. You can defend your opinions.
Yes.
And you can run through the math of it.
So the only way to do that, though, is to detether that processing from a result or an outcome that you want. Mm-hmm. You can't desire or you can't have the thing like you can ask any question and think about it anyway, as long as you come to the same conclusion at the end of it all.
Right.
You can't be going toward a conclusion.
Mm-mm.
If you're going to genuinely get clarity, you have to let go of any possible conclusion that you want to be the factor. And this is, I think, where people stop the process. This is where I stop the process. I'm like, well, I have a sense that I might not come to the conclusion that I want to come to. So do I really want to go and process all my thought around this? Because if I'm really being honest with myself and, depersonalizing the data in front of me, I kind of want to believe what I want to believe, regardless of what the thinking tells me. I'm probably not going to do that. I'm probably just going to stay out of that thinking processing.
Right.
Right. And then what's crazy is the other side of the thinking, the extroverted thinking, it absolutely attaches to outcome. Mm-hmm. Like that's what its genius is, to say, I want this building to be built or this outcome to happen or this goal to accomplish. That's the point. I'm attached to an outcome. I'm focused on an implemented output on a timeline in reality. And everything organizes around getting that done. And we got to slow people. I have this process. Fairly accessible. Effectiveness people have to be slowed down to say it's not just about getting the outcome. It's also the quality of the outcome too, right? It's not just the efficient path there. Like the quality matters. And so what's interesting is it's almost there's a tension point between these two types of thinking. And I think with the perceiving functions in the last episode, we didn't see the tension as much because it was just about perception and just taking in information. But here, because we're using it to make judgments on our lives and the things we're going to do or not do, or the decisions we're going to make, that tension can cause some challenge in somebody, even internally in them, not
Mhm.
just externally. So being able to disconnect from an outcome, that is not necessarily a talent for people that don't have this accuracy process as a strength. It's going to be really hard to do.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just trying to run this diagnostically through. Let's say there's an EFJ, an ESFJ who's struggling with this introverted thinking or accuracy as their 3-year-old. And the voice pops up and tells them something. It's an opinion, maybe, about their performance in a social engagement. Like, you were dumb there. You said the wrong thing. Oh man, I said the wrong thing. I was dumb there. I didn't think about the thing. I hurt somebody's feelings. Whatever the criticism might come in. What I hear you saying, Antonia, is you're saying that's the start of the processing.
Yep.
You don't go, oh, well, I guess I'm a bad person and I'm dumb.
Right.
You say, okay, I have that self-talk. I have that opinion about myself. Now let me start to process through to get to the other side. I need clarity about how do I really think about myself?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're positing.
Yeah. Any opinion that pops up, that's the beginning. Yeah. And whether it's an opinion about your behavior, in the case that you were talking about, it would be somebody who's like self-assessing their behavior in public, or if it's like a political opinion or a religious opinion. And I think it is not a bad thing to do sufficient thought labor, get to the end of it, say, I don't have the receipts on this one. I just want to believe it. You still have clarity, right? But now you know that this is not an opinion necessarily that you should be imposing upon everybody else, because it is deeply subjective. It's just yours. And that said, people will still do that, and we'll get to the feeling functions in just a moment. But there's a very important there's a modesty to this function, and even people with TP preferences, and of course some FJs also use this function, but even people with TP preferences can do this function very poorly. They're like leaving a lot of money on the table because they're not doing full processing. It's hard. It takes a lot of thought labor, and sometimes we get a conceit about our ability to be objective or to be unbiased and miss our own biases, which is why it questions a premise again. It has to keep going back to the point of origin and questioning the premise, because there might be something I missed, or I'm a different person now than I was the first time I thought about this, and new information may have come in, and now that alters how I think about this thing. So
it's not just about clarity, it's about getting more clarity over time.
Right.
So it's ever increasing clarity about the same thought line.
That's right.
Is what you're positing as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So it's not, the process is never done.
It's never done.
There's a completion of the cycle, but what you're saying with accuracy is you go back in and you go over the same territory again to refine it even further. Yeah.
If you haven't changed your opinions in the last year, much less the last decade, you probably are not doing, you're leaving a lot of introverted thinking money on the table. And so I think it's a function that's very important for people, but it creates clarity. Like, that's its gift. And clarity is very motivating, right? Like, if you are clear on what you individually are thinking, separate from how the world is trying to influence you, there's like a very strong ballast there. And there's a sense of self that's hard to find in some of the other functions. Like, it's hard to, in certain ways, particularly when it comes to things where you look around and like the emperor has no clothes on, you become an immovable object, right?
Yeah.
It's like everybody else is doing this thing and you're just kind of looking around everybody like, am I the only person who's not nuts here? Right.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you are. And you have to question that premise too. It's like, if everybody else is thinking it, then why am I thinking something differently? And then you got to go do the math on that.
Or if we're all thinking this, why isn't somebody saying something?
Yeah.
Why are we all like, I mean, there's at the moment of this recording, and I'm not even going to get close to anything that could, I mean, somebody listening is gonna be able to piece this together, what I'm saying. There's a situation in the world right now that's fairly obvious. Everybody knows it. And no one will, like, few people will say it, but they're always seen as combatants and they're dismissed, but everybody knows it. Like, at the time of this recording, we all know it. It's clear as day. And everybody's like pretending like it's not a real thing. And even people they're like, maybe we shouldn't pretend, like, even people are hinting at, we maybe shouldn't pretend like this isn't a real thing. Like,
Joel, there are so many of those right now.
This one's like,
listener is going to be like, which one are you talking about?
But this one's so obvious. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, and I know I don't say a word because I'll get attacked if I even mention it.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't even say the thing that we all know and we're all thinking, but if we do it, it's like,
I can think of half a dozen things you might be referring to right now.
Very good. That's better, because then no one will think I'm saying anything specific. But I there's one that's big for me personally.
Right.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, seriously?
Right. Well, and somebody might project onto you what that one thing is.
Yes.
And that, by the way, is something that they themselves need to do more thinking about.
Yes.
Because if they're going to project onto you the one thing that they're thinking about,
especially if it's defensive,
they need to figure out why they think that that's yours.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, that's interesting. Of the half a dozen to dozen things that Joel could possibly be talking about right now, why do I assume that he's talking about the one that's coming up for me?
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And then dive into it. Go, why am I defensive about this? All right, what's going on? So that's processing thought, and it leads to opinions, and it leads to, belief systems. It leads to all sorts of stuff. And it's really vital to process thoughts. And it's hard to do. It just legitimately is hard to do. By the same token, it's incredibly important to live thought. It's very important, because that's how we get things done. That's how we make life happen for the most part. And it's how we don't just make life happen, but we optimize our resource to make life happen for more people, right? Like, everybody benefits when we do a good job of living thinking. So, so there's two different criteria here. When you are living thinking, you make progress. You have good systems, right? You manage your resource well. You've got a good situation. You solve problems. You have candor. When you are doing introverted thinking, when you're processing thinking well, you have clarity. Clarity comes with articulation. It comes with an ability to explain those thought processes and do the math and express it. And so there's a lot of benefits and gifts that come along with it too. And it comes with a sense of lack of agitation about your opinions.
Yeah.
When people do sufficient introverted thinking, it's really hard to trigger them. Like, they're not very easily triggered, especially in debates. Like, they're not pulling on their lack of thinking their opinions through. They're not bringing it out into the political spectrum. Like, they just they know what they think. They're okay with other people disagreeing. That doesn't threaten them, right? These are subjective anyway. And if you think something different than me, then that's your thing.
Well, and I was going to say, what's really an indication of certainty versus uncertainty. If I'm uncertain, I'm going to be triggered and I won't have, but then I thought, actually, I took it one step further and I thought, no, because you can have clarity about the fact that you're uncertain. Mm-hmm. So you can have processed thinking without certainty at the other side. You can just have clarity. Clarity and certainty are two different things.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so I think that's also, if the expectation is certainty and you're mistaking what Antonia's saying about clarity to be certainty, that's not necessarily the expectation here.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great distinction. Hey, good introverted thinking with distinctions there.
Oh, I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah. I have had thoughts or opinion. I'll almost say that I've put them in almost a hospital bed. Like, opinions or beliefs around certain topics that I feel are important for me to know how I think about them.
Hospital bed?
Yeah. Or maybe not hospital, maybe a laboratory bench or something. But it's like,
you mean categories of things?
Well, let me finish the analogy.
Okay. Yeah. Just you totally confused me. The hospital bed. What? Wait, what?
Well, almost like I thought I had an opinion on this and then it got broken.
Oh, you put it in triage.
Yeah, well, not triage. Triage sounds a little bit more hasty. It sounds like I don't know. I was just like I had an opinion, and then all of a sudden something made me reevaluate it, and I went, "Oh no, that's not a healthy opinion."
Oh, okay.
So I put it in. I thought a hospital bed because it was an unhealthy
opinion hospital.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a better analogy.
That's fine. No, that's fine. I just needed to know what you were talking about.
Let me grab an analogy that's less confusing to other people who are not inside my brain. Think about it more like a laboratory, and I'll just keep working on what I think about this thing.
Gotcha.
I'll put folders on my computer and I'll go do research. And every time I find an article that strikes me as something that's relevant, I'll tag it or I'll put it in the folder. And I have spent literally years trying to figure out what my opinion is on a topic that I'm pretty sure is something I should have an opinion on. Years. I'm still in the process of it with a couple things that are probably pretty relevant to me as a woman. And, but I don't rush the process. I wait. I'm clear on where I'm at in the process. And I have not gotten clarity on the conclusion. Yeah. So I just keep researching it and thinking about it and questioning the premise and seeking more information and putting together the pieces.
It's already settled, Antonia. Let's just move on.
That's
Don't keep
right.
processing. Don't keep digging up old stuff. We already figured this out as society. Just go.
But
we can tell you what the answer is.
That's
just
right.
listen to us. Let's get moving.
Well, and that's the reason why I think I should have an opinion is because I'm surrounded by people who have already come to conclusions, which is a little nerve-wracking to me because I'm no dummy and I do a lot of thought labor. So it's not like I'm a person who's mentally lazy. And I haven't come to a solid conclusion on this. And
They're
so
just smarter than you, Antonia. That's all.
Yeah.
They're just thinking more deeply and more fully.
That may be true. I might be somebody who's too slow to figure this out, but I don't think that's the case. And so because of that, I get really disconcerted with how certain people are about an opinion on something that I think is very ambiguous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll have these processes and I'm clear on where I'm at, but I'm not clear on the conclusion. But the thing is that when I finally figure out what I think on something and come to a conclusion, doesn't mean I won't put it in a vault and be like, okay, I've already figured that out. I do revisit it from time to time, especially as I update myself as an individual, because my process, like I have to process the thought through different new information, which is the person who's doing the processing. When that gets updated, now I have to process all the information again because the CPU is a different CPU.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm pretty confident in anything I have an opinion around.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't feel any triggering when somebody disagrees with me and if anybody asks me why I think something, which actually doesn't happen that often, but when they ask me what my opinion is on something and why, I have all the math. Now, I'm sure they're not interested and don't want the data dump, but I will definitely tell them all the reasons.
You are judicious on who you will share your opinions with. They can handle it. Like some people will be so triggered, you would be careful not to share it with someone, I'm guessing. Well,
I generally only share my opinions with people who will listen to the reasoning.
Yeah, they'll go all the way through it. They won't just hear a soundbite and go, "Oh, you're on team whatever."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not. I just had this thought.
I'm on team me. That's the team I'm on. And so, there's a lot of benefit to understanding the difference between these two and recognizing when you're living thought versus when you're processing.
Okay,
thought.
so we're on the topic of thought. I'm going to take us down a road. We don't have to be too long on this, but I just love to find practical, like real world examples. And every time we find something that's practical and real world, it has the potential to be divisive. So here we go. Freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of being able to freely it's freedom of expression, quite frankly. Maybe not just the words we use, but how we express ourselves, right? How we dress and express ourselves. I think the limit is as long as we're not harming somebody else in a real way, like in a tangible, physical, extroverted thinking way where it has an impact.
Yes.
It's okay. Like at least here in the United States, up until this point, at the time of this recording, that's how it's traditionally been.
Right.
In our country. There's been some limits, but mostly you can say whatever you want or express any way you want as long as you don't harm somebody.
Yes.
In a general sense. But so freedom of speech, I mean, technically we could limit that and it wouldn't hurt thought. I mean, the idea is, I guess, that the reason why freedom of expression is important, it's because then I can think whatever I want. But we've already just made this distinction by saying something in the outer world and speaking it or expressing it. That's an extroverted lived action. But I could think internally and have any opinion or thought I wanted internally without having the freedom to express it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't cut me off from my thinking, right? Or is there a distinction here in how we think about expressed thought versus just understood or processed thought?
So, I mean, as you know,
I know we're going to hit potentially, again, divisiveness here. I'm just trying to understand the principle in, like, am I processing thought by externalizing it?
Right.
And I'm processing it and I have to speak it out to see how I really think because it changes as I express it? I would argue that it is. That's how I see it that way.
So,
I know I'm taking time.
Yeah, and this is definitely a can of worms. But that said, or at least it could be a can of worms for a listener.
Which is crazy because 10 years ago, we wouldn't have said it's a can of worms for somebody. It's like we would have just said something and rolled on. But now all of a sudden we're like careful about this.
When something is repressed inside of us, this is what Carl Jung said. When something is repressed inside of us, then it plays out in the political sphere. We project it.
Social and political sphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what he said. Yeah,
exactly. And so one of the reasons why this is a hot button issue is because people are not doing enough processing, in my opinion. And as you know, and this is something I don't mind telling people, I say this on X a lot, that I'm a free speech absolutist. So that's the position I came down on. And it took me years to come down on that position. And if you do research, there's like different schools of thought on free speech absolutism. And there's a particular judge who has a theory about what that means, and I follow his line of thinking. So it's like a whole thing. But
and you have spent years researching,
I have
thinking about this.
Yeah, this is one of my principles.
Not just like, oh, I like that one on the shelf, I'll buy that one.
Yeah, this is one of those principles that I don't mind sharing because I feel so strongly about it.
And if somebody asked you could explain why.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
the math behind it.
Yep. That said, I think that when we live thought, the assumption is that there is going to be specific impact that happens, and like the impact is resource oriented.
Yeah, or a real result in some way.
Right. So like there's no protection on yelling fire in a theater. When you yell fire and you do so with a certain tonality, right? If you yell fire in a theater, the impact is that you're going to panic a group of people. They're all going to flee to the exit. Some people might get trampled in the process, and you've moved a bunch of resource around, right? You've moved human energy around, and you did so under false pretenses. So it's a lie, right? Like if there's a real fire, of course you yell fire. But if there's no actual fire and you're just playing around, that is not protected under freedom of speech. And the reason why is because it's actually a command, right? It's not stated the way that commands usually are, but it is a command for anybody who understands what it means to yell fire in a theater. You are basically giving people the command to take action against something that could threaten their life. So this is more of an extroverted thinking style thing, meaning that you're trying to have a specific impact, and that impact is not that's not protected. To play a prank is not protected. That said, to be able to give the result of your introverted thinking conclusions is protected. And I personally think that one of the reasons why it should be protected is number one, one of the ways that we refine our thoughts is to hear the thoughts of other people. That's part of how it works.
Yeah,
we sharpen each other's thinking, and we share data with each other, and we also model what is acceptable thought. So if you get to a place where you start limiting people being able to express their thoughts, you're now implying that they should be limiting the thoughts altogether. And most people don't do, and they just won't, they never will do sufficient thought labor. If you start limiting people's ability to share thoughts, you limit their ability to insinuate a style of thinking that another person might not have been able to do themselves. So while they should vet the idea, they may never have come to that conclusion on their own because they don't have the wattage for it.
Yeah.
And they don't have the time for it. They don't have the energy or space for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So when a person gives an idea or the result of maybe years of expertise and a lot of thought labor and a lot of processing, introverted thinking, if you start limiting people's ability to do that, you make it so that people who could benefit from that and then take the result and then vet it.
Yeah.
Right? They would have never come to it on their own because they just don't, they're busy, or they are just not the kind of person who's interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You limit their ability to take it and then vet it through their own introverted thinking. They don't, and I'm not saying that it should be like contagious, right? Like they should just adopt it because it sounds smart. But it's almost like, if you start limiting what people can manufacture, it's kind of a similar concept. If you start limiting what people can manufacture, then only people who can like make certain items for themselves, like cars, there will be a small group of people who are driving and most people who are not. Well, why aren't people making their own cars? It's like, well, because they don't have the capacity. And so the ability to share the invention of making cars and share the manufacturing of it makes it so that everybody can drive.
Yeah, so you immediately couched it or brought it into the legal framework, but there's no debate necessarily on changing the law, at least in our country, around free speech. I think it's more of a social conversation than it is a legal conversation, in that people feel this way or believe that. Maybe we should talk about the feeling functions. We'll express why. And what I hear you saying then is it's not that introverted thinking, and again, I'm using this as like a thought exercise to understand what processing is for this function, not necessarily to argue for free speech, although I agree with you. I think free speech should be both legal and culturally approved of and to its fullest expression until it causes harm. I really believe that. But we're talking about the principles. And so that's like a opinion that I have, or a thought I have around the legal and cultural expression of free speech. I'm trying to understand the mechanisms of introverted thinking or accuracy in the framework of that. So coming back, whatever your political or viewpoint or cultural persuasion is on free speech, fire in a theater, and all that crap.
Oh, right.
For a moment, come back over to the idea of processing thought. What you're saying is the reason why a restriction on being able to share the processed thought, it like harms the person that's processing. In other words, the processing can't give with clarity. It has to be shared, or at least has to be able to be acted upon or brought out of yourself. Otherwise, it doesn't really have a full. It's like harmful to the person doing that. It doesn't let them be who they are or bring out the thinking into the world. They won't be able to do anything with that thinking if they can't express it. And so we don't know what the conclusions or clarity is going to be. And so in our country and our philosophies, we say we don't know all the capacity of the human spirit to process thought and opinion and thinking. So let's just leave it open. As long as it doesn't harm anybody, let's let people go through whatever process they need to go through. And I think you and I would extend that principally to say, even if it's a dirty process, like even if it's messy and it doesn't, oh wait, that's a really weird opinion, dude. Like, what are you thinking there? Holy crap, man. As long as they don't act upon that or implement something, the only way they will get through to have the clarity is to have the bad thinking in the whole way there. In other words, they have to think something bad to overcome the bad thinking to get to the thing good. Again, I'm putting feeler qualities on these, right? This is depersonal, but you know what I'm saying? Like unhelpful thoughts to get to the helpful thoughts.
Yes.
You have to have all on the table. Otherwise you're cutting off some of your processing ability to get the clarity.
Yes.
Maybe that was like a long way to get around to that.
Part of processing thought is articulation.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you can't articulate what your thought process is, it gets stuck. It goes into stasis. And so you will not have a complete process. Yeah. And so, I mean, if that's all you were asking, then that could have been a much shorter conversation.
Well, I think, but the reason I brought free speech into it is because there is something around the reason we protect it, I think, is because we understand that expressed thought. Like somebody might say something dumb or uncalibrated of their opinion. And then they can now they can work through that. Yeah. Like, oh, okay, let's shape that thought. Go further with that. Well, you said that opinion, you're onto something, but go further with it. Go to the full end of it. Get the clarity all the way through. Right. Don't just stop there. Yeah. That was kind of a harmful opinion you have there. Why don't you go? Yeah, that's my view. Or that's a really interesting theory you have there, but go all the way through that. You know, it may not even be qualitatively harmful or beneficial for people. It might just be, does this work or not? Or does this actually play out? Or is this a good thinking? Is this clean thinking altogether? Yeah. Yeah. I call it complete thoughts. Yeah. Most of the time when you hear something that you find offensive, it's an incomplete thought. And if you let the person continue to express, they'll start hearing themselves. They'll start hearing their inability to support that thought, or they actually do have a complete thought. You just stopped them before they were able to get there. And by the time they get to the end, you're like, oh yeah, no, I agree with that. So allowing people to fully express thought is part of the processing. It's part of figuring it out. Even though it's happening in the inner landscape, thought gets put to words. And so expressing, like putting into language these concepts. And it kind of depends on the individual. There are some people who are highly visual that are able to you know, and lead with introverted thinking, are able to put together very complicated models inside of their head, and they never need to communicate them to anybody ever. But most people need to hear themselves say their thoughts. They need to hear, they need to be questioned, and then realize where there's aspects of their opinions that they haven't thought through. And I would say the pattern of the two perceiving functions of introverted intuition and introverted sensing, it feels like those are more complete expressions of the function of sensing and intuition. How do I say this? Okay, so then come to the thinking. What I mean to say is that there's a lot of power in the internal thinking process. There's a limitation. You lack power in the external thinking process. You're limited by real world markers. Like you're going to die someday. Physics limits you. Gravity exists. Time will run out. It's going to be dark tonight. It's going to start raining next week. Like there's real things that happen in the external world that remove my power for that implementation or impact, right? I don't have full power, but there's a power I gain when I go in the inner space of thought that's way more than the external space of thought. It doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like the inner space is more powerful, but that engine doesn't have all the limitations the external world has. And in a way, I think a lot of people fear the inner space. It can't be controlled. It can't be manipulated. And so they do things like limiting free speech or other things in the outer world to try to equalize. If somebody's more attuned to the external world, they realize that as much as people attuned there feel like they're trying to pull things and put power positions in play.
Yeah.
I think there's a desperation for that because they realize just how lack of power they have.
Well, that's the concept of the pen is mightier than the sword.
Exactly.
And if a thought becomes contagious and it's inconvenient to authority figures,
yes,
then they need to stamp it down as fast as possible.
So
or at least they feel that way.
The inner space of a human is extremely powerful and subversive to the external world.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous for a lot of people that favor the external world.
But it's not dangerous for anybody who has done sufficient processing.
Yes.
Because they understand the landscape. It's
exactly.
not filled with landmines.
But what I'm trying to argue is that the power is there. It's worth the cost of learning how to do this.
Right. Well, what's interesting though, and this is going into a bit of theory, and I don't know how long this podcast is going to be. But I guess we're just chatting here.
I'm following our intuition.
Okay,
we'll try to make it effective or efficient. We'll go into feeling right next, but land this and then we'll go into feelings.
Okay. Speaking about the power of the introverted space, when we're processing, when we're in our internal landscape, we don't have to follow the same laws of nature that we do when we're living in the outside world.
Yes.
But the power is only there when we impose limitations on it ourselves.
We discipline it.
Mm-hmm. It has to be disciplined.
Because it is completely a wild, feral part of us that we have to be the ones that put the structure in.
Right.
And channel it in a positive way.
Right. We believe everything we think. We believe everything we intuit. We believe everything we remember. And we believe everything we feel. So because of that, because our nature is to think that if it emerged from within me, it must be true. It must have veracity to it. We have to understand that that is not how that works. Just because the outside world, like when we're living in the world, we get pushback from other people and other things. In the inner space, nobody's giving us pushback unless we give pushback to ourselves. So we have to be judicious about like not believing our memories when they, like when I remember you said it this way. But if we truly process the moment, if we truly process the experience, maybe in the review, we'll go, oh, they didn't actually say it that way.
Yep.
They said it this way, and I took that meaning.
Yep.
That's a really important thing to be able to do, is to not just go, you said this. It's like, the person's like, I never said this. Yes, you did. And it's like, why don't you review that again? And if you can't remember exactly what they said, then you're holding on to your interpretation of it is not exactly fair. We can't believe everything we intuit because we're going to apply a bunch of stuff that's probably not accurate. And if we do too much intuitive processing without getting enough outer world feedback, we start getting tunnel vision. If we believe everything we think, we are going to be sloppy thinkers. We're not going to be able to, quote unquote, show the receipts of our thought processes. So it's really important that we apply discipline to our inner space, that we ourselves go, I'm not allowed to believe an opinion until I have fully vetted it. Well, what does fully vetting an opinion mean? Well, it's different for each person, but you have to have some sort of vetting criteria. I read someplace, they said, it doesn't matter what your nightly routine is if you're doing skincare on your face. They're like, it doesn't really matter what your nightly routine is. It only matters that you have one. And when it comes to vetting our opinions, I'm like, I think that there are better or worse ways to vet our opinions. I do believe that there are better disciplines, but it kind of doesn't matter what it is, just that you have one, that you're not believing everything you think. And so now that's imposing laws, right? That's imposing rules on our inner space. And I believe our inner space becomes more powerful because of it, in the same way that we are actually more effective because the outside world imposes limitations on us.
Yeah.
So I think the same thing applies.
Well, and I think that we have to be in charge of those disciplines. I think if we adopt them from the outer world, they're not ours. We can adopt them and then ratify them for ourselves.
Yes.
But we have to own it.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to feel like we're not ourself.
Yep.
And we're going to feel like we don't get to be who we truly are or think how we truly think.
Yes.
Let's talk about feeling.
Okay.
So there's two ways to express or have attitude toward feeling. There are two functions, or extroverted feeling, we call it harmony. Introverted feeling, we call it authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get away from the two functions for a second. Just talk about feeling as its own radical nature, fundamental feeling. Again, this is judgment. This is criteria to make a good decision, not based on an impersonal criteria, but very personal criteria.
Right, exactly. So feeling is a function that keeps us tuned to our values, not just problem solving, but the things that are they're softer truths. They're truths that you might not be able to do the math on, but that doesn't make them any less true. Like, I offended a person. Well, it doesn't make sense that they were offended. Doesn't matter. They're still offended. And that impacts my relationship to them. So I have to deal with the reality that they are offended. And now my connection with them, my rapport with them has been broken. So it's not something that necessarily makes sense, but it's still something that has to be engaged with.
Or I feel angry. The situation shouldn't dictate anger, but I feel angry.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit that I feel that emotion. So
Right.
now I've got to process that emotion because it's a real thing that's happening to me, whether it should happen or not. It is happening.
Exactly. So when you start taking the human component in mind, and because we are inherently social creatures, we can't stop interacting with ourselves or interacting with other people. That's just part of humaning. And the human creature is irrational. There's a book called Predictably Irrational, which basically talks about however logical we think we are, however much we believe that we can, quote unquote, show the receipts for all of our thoughts. The truth is that there will always be this part of us that doesn't care what the reasonable or logical thing is. And that's 100% of humans, right? You can be as introverted thinking or extroverted thinking as you want to believe you are. And yet there's still a part that is deeply irrational. So it's the feeling part.
I just see all the comments now, all the INTJs. That's not true. I'm never irrational.
Yeah.
Like, okay, whatever.
Okay. Well, just thinking that is irrational. So, but I think even the most hardcore thinker goes, yeah, no, I know. I know I am.
Have you read our comments under our YouTube videos, Antonia? Maybe they're not even thinkers. Maybe they're mistyped. Well,
Yeah.
I'll throw them a bone. Maybe they're not even typed correctly. That's how I'll rationalize it to myself.
Well, they're all lovely community members and we appreciate them all. So that said, there's the feeling criteria is making decisions based on things that cannot be problem solved through logical thought or applied thought. It's the human stuff, right? It's humans humaning. And so if you can't show the receipts, you have to have a value that indicates some sort of, it's basically best practices. What are our best practices for dealing with each other and ourselves? What are the values we're going to bring? How are we going to determine that this is like, yeah, no, I should be interacting with people this way, or I shouldn't be interacting with people this way? Well, why not? Well, because they get mad. Well, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Right. And so it's making decisions based on all the stuff that lives outside of the math of reality.
I love how thinkers describe it. It's like just all the stuff that doesn't make sense. And we have to accommodate for it, right? All this nonsense that humans bring. That's why the feelers exist.
Right. Well, and I mean, this is one of the reasons why feelers are not offended as easily when you say, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like feelers frequently, I mean, sometimes if they're uncertain or insecure about their ability to make sense in general, then they protect that part of themselves. But the feeling criteria is okay with it, not like the math not working out, because they're still dealing with the reality of the situation at hand. And so the neocortex is a much more recent development in our brains than the mammalian brain.
The emotional systems.
That's right. The mammalian brain is way more ancient than the neocortex. So as much as the neocortex came online and was like, I'm in charge here, the mammalian brain like laughs at it. It goes, oh, okay. Yeah, you think you're in charge here. And the feeling part of us is the part that is connected to the mammalian aspect of who and what we are. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about, again, we're going back to the framework of the extroverted part of this function. Extroverted attitude feeling. FE, extroverted feeling or harmony, is lived feeling. The introverted attitude of feeling, introverted feeling or authenticity, is processed feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this qualitatively. What do we mean by lived feeling versus processed feeling?
So when you live feeling outside of yourself, since it is so in tuned with the human component, well, what are feelings that live outside of us? That's other people. Those are other humans and their emotions. And it's also the rapport or the connection between humans. So extroverted feeling or harmony lives feeling by paying attention to the number one signal of the feeling or emotional equilibrium, which is rapport, connectedness. So there's energy that gets passed between humans, and that energetic signature communicates a lot of pieces of information, particularly how do these people feel about each other? How are they impacting each other on a feeling or an emotional level? And so values end up being more focused on, and this is too simple a word, but I'm struggling for another one, the etiquette of relationships. How are we supposed to be treating each other? How are we supposed to be showing up? How are we supposed to be making sure everybody's okay? If I'm so attuned to that rapport element, that means that I can't do it from a clinical distance. I've got to be in the game. I'm living this. I'm living feeling. So if I'm in the game, that means that I'm experiencing this rapport. I'm part of this energetic back and forth that could be just you and me in a room, or it could be a group of people at a party, or it could be a convention of 10,000 people, or it could be like a whole state culture, or it could be a country, or it could be the globe, right? It's like we just keep going out and out and out. What are the best practices of engaging with each other if we're all tuned into living our feelings with each other?
This makes me think of Mad Men and Walt Disney World. So there's this episode of Mad Men, I think in later episodes, where I think it's a Japanese company is coming to America to visit the Madison Avenue ad executives in the show. And most of the episode is preparing for this group of Japanese people to come and like Japanese executives to come into their offices. And they're tuning into the Japanese culture of like what kind of gifts to get and how you deny a gift and like repeatedly, because it's rude to accept the gift that a Japanese executive would bring you, or I don't remember all the details, but the bowing and all the different cultural things to make them feel welcome there. Mm-hmm. I think this is really what it is. They're an office full of mostly probably thinker men at this time period of history, like the 1960s. It's all fictional, but it's based on real life type of things. They're trying to do this extroverted feeling harmony thing. They're like, and it's funny because they're not very good at it because they're not thinking in these terms of like what's all the soft stuff around the cultural engagement.
But they have to do in order to get their extroverted thinking goals accomplished.
So they have to like live feeling out here to have the things happen that they want to happen. So it's just it's comical, but it's also illustrative of what I think what you're talking about is lived feeling in the outer world. And then I think of also Walt Disney World. When they train employees at Walt Disney World, they ensure that they're culturally sensitive to people. So what I understand is if you use your index finger to point a direction, some cultures find that deeply offensive. It's like flipping the bird or something. It's very offensive to point with the index finger. So if you notice, if you ever go to Disney, they gesture with their whole hand, or they won't actually point. They'll use multiple fingers to point. They're trained that way because some cultures interpret that as, very rude. And again, that's lived feeling out in the outer world. It's a cultural etiquette that they're trying to tune into to not be offensive to people that might not be the same cultural backgrounds. They're being sensitive to this and they're thinking about it in calibrative terms. Okay, we want everybody to have a good time here. We need to make sure we're not offending certain cultures or people groups.
Mm-hmm. And so etiquette and cultural norms and graciousness and those sorts of things, that's to account for strangers. That's to account for people who you don't actually know what's going on for them. So we create a sense of etiquette in order to, and best
welcoming,
practices.
hospitality, all that stuff.
Yeah. Then when you get to personal relationships, then you've got a totally different channel, which is the channel of supporting them. You're not just doing things to not offend them. You're doing things to support them and to make sure that they're having as good an experience as you can, because your energy and their energy, particularly when you get really close to a person, you're merging energetic signatures, or it's almost like this is just going all the time. So if they have something wrong or off, or they're not feeling good, they're sending that energy to you and now it's yours. And then you've got to go, how do I make it so that they're going to be okay? And so now you go into support. You go into almost like it's your job to ensure that they're back into a good space. And this is where need meeting comes in, and that sort of thing. So it's an attunement. When we live our feelings, we become attuned with the emotional equilibrium of everybody around us. Because again, there are laws and rules, right? If they're hungry, they might be grumpy because they're hungry. Because the rule is if you don't eat, your system might might start sending up, distress signals, and it wants you to pay attention to it. And so now you're grumpy. That's a law. That's a rule of nature. And so extroverted feeling, when it's living its feeling, tunes into those rules and laws. And it's responsive because needs are responsive, right? And people's emotions, they're irrational and they come up when they come up. And so this is a function that becomes very responsive. It can be proactive to a certain extent. It's like, okay, I'm going with my family to the beach. I know we're going to want towels. I know we're going to want snacks. I know we're going to want umbrellas. I know we're going to want all of these basic things. That's all predictable. So I can proactively gather all those things. But when I get there, I may or may not have accounted for illness, like somebody getting food.
Headache.
Yeah, a headache, or like food poisoning someplace or whatever. And so I might have items around me that can help account for that. But once that happens, I have to be in response to it. So it's a function that's way more responsive than it is proactive, unlike, say, extroverted thinking or effectiveness, which is living thought and is problem solving and trying to predict challenges in a proactive way, but not on the human level. So those systems are proactively set up because they're dealing with rational things, right? Or not irrational anyway. They're dealing with objects that have no rationality or irrationality.
Yes.
Whereas humans have irrationality. So you have to be more responsive to their needs.
So harmony users in our coaching and our programs and all the different things that we coach and work with people in, our personality life path also, they'll report. And then we do a lot of work with this in the PLP life path, because harmony users go, I'm so attuned to everybody in my life. I'm living, feeling. I honestly don't know how I feel about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talk about the other side of this introverted feeling, the processing of feeling, basically it's somebody that doesn't maybe they don't know how to process, or they just don't have the time to slow down to process, or it's a little uncertain, or it's fearful to process emotions and tune into what's going on for you. I think there's a desire for harmony users to be able to process, or anybody wants to be able to process their emotions. We avoid, if we don't know if we can process it, we tend to obfuscate, avoid, compartmentalize strong emotion. But I think if we knew what to do, I think most humans would want to feel the relief or something from processing these, and to know what we really feel about something.
Well, so if you flip to the other side and you go into feeling inward is processing feeling, it can be either emotions, or it can be instincts or impulses, or it can be sort of like things that come up for you incidentally. Just like when you're living feeling, you're tuning into what is coming up for other people incidentally. Processing your own feelings is what is coming up for you incidentally. And that will give you a ton of information about yourself, right? It's introspection. So you process your own emotions. Specifically, that's usually the thing that is incidentally coming up as an emotional response. It could be more of a vague feeling. It doesn't have to be like a specific emotion. It could just be like like something inside of me is telling me to freeze or to throttle something. So it could be something that's not specifically emotional, but it is a feeling, right? Like something is telling me to go inside. And so you're processing that. You're processing why you felt the way that you did, why this emotion is coming up for you, what it says about who you are, what is motivating you, what is driving you. All of these things are separated from the outside world. And again, just like with introverted thinking, or actually all the introverted functions, there's no limitations imposed in here. So everything you've ever felt becomes like part of this big identity, right? Like everything inside of there is on the table. Every feeling you've ever had, every emotion, right? It's all this huge world of identity, of self. I guess identity is, people code that very specifically. So I'll just use the word self. It's all this big landscape of self. And so the importance of processing is that just like a need in the outside world doesn't go away, I mean, I guess it does. If you get hungry enough, eventually the person dies and then that's a problem solved. But now you have a dead body, right? It's like
creates another need.
Right.
You're trading needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got a different challenge. So those don't just go away, but even more so in the timelessness of the eternal landscape. Our emotions, like if we have an emotion that we have not processed, it doesn't go away. It just waits for us to process it. That's why you've got books written like Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Like it's just kind of hanging out and waiting for you.
We're collecting them over time and they're building up more and more plaque in our emotional system.
Yep.
And they have to be processed or they're going to keep getting carried along and probably cause some challenge in our life.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. This is why I mentioned before, I think it was the last episode. I was like, if you're somebody with extroverted preferences and you never make time to do any processing, you become an asshole, right? Because these emotions are jerking your chain all the time. They're like trying to get your attention. They're causing you to behave in ways that you can't explain because they're just waiting for you to acknowledge that they are a truth about you. And a truth about us shows up. Again, anything we repress plays out in the social and the political sphere. And that could be the social and political sphere of your marriage. It could be the social and political sphere of raising your children or being at work. This doesn't just mean that you're saying salty things on Twitter. It's like, no, you might be bringing baggage into literally every conversation you have with your spouse.
Yeah.
So these are important things to address. And so processing feeling is crucial. Now, it means you've got to be alone by yourself. Just like with introverted thinking, that's about what makes sense to you and you doing your own the thought labor. Introverted feeling means that you're not paying attention to anybody that's outside of your own skin. Like it's 100% you in those moments that you're processing. Now, other people will have been an imprint on you. So you might take other people into consideration in how they're influencing your processing, but you're paying attention to yourself in that moment. And that can be considered like a lot of times we get discouraged from this because that is people accuse that people who do that of being self-centered.
Let's talk about introverted feeling, authenticity, the measuring tool, or how do we know we've processed something? So, and then I also want to talk about the idea of disciplining it too, just like we talked about introverted thinking or accuracy. But let's talk about the qualitative nature. Somebody that's listening right now and they're like, okay, process my emotions. What does that even, I don't want to feel bad. Yeah. I don't want to just sit and cry and feel grief or anger or frustration or fill in whatever emotion. That sounds horrible. Yeah. Joel and Antonia. No way am I going to do that.
Says everybody except for the FPs. Yeah.
Oh, sometimes I avoid it too.
Well,
to be honest,
that's fair.
I don't always want to go and feel all the emotions.
That's fair.
I have more of a proclivity to it, but
so we have a friend. Her name is Annie Lala. She's brilliant. She helps people find love. Actually, she's on her dharma to help people find relationships and love. And then she helps people who are in relationships to be able to discover what it is that's creating any sort of obstruction to experiencing the love that they're trying to send to each other. And she explained this model to me. I don't know if she invented it or if she got it from someplace. Don't ask me the source. Somebody's asked me the source and all I could find was a paper written in Denmark that seemed to support this concept in theory, but I couldn't read the entire thing. I could only see portions of it translated. So I don't have a source. I just have the model.
Okay, all the thinker footnotes here out of the way. Like if you're looking for the data of this, the math. Yes, Antonia, we know you don't have the math behind this one specifically.
I don't have the math. I just have the framework.
You're talking to feelers, so they can have different ways of knowing.
Yeah,
we don't need
right.
the math.
That's right. They're okay with it. So she says, and she actually says this in our a empowered program for INFPs and INFJs. She says that feelings come in waves like sine curves. And to do true emotional processing, now this is different than just feeling processing. Feeling processing can also be why am I feeling a sense of hesitation, right? That's like not a specific emotion. That's trying to figure out what is causing hesitation in you. So that's more looking at your motivations, more like what's causing you to start or stop something. That's slightly different. Most people do need to do more of that. They do need to do more processing of, just sort of these sense impressions that come up. But usually, unless you have introverted feeling or authenticity as one of your first two preferred functions, most of the time, the thing that the rest of us are avoiding is emotional processing. And those emotions, they're the ones who really will mess you up. So I'm gonna primarily talk about emotional processing, even though there's other kinds of processing too. So she says that feelings come in waves like sine curves. And in order to process an emotion, you have to allow it to have a complete cycle. Almost kind of like we were talking about with introverted thinking. You can't just believe it. You have to actually process it. You have to go through all of the math of it. So she says, imagine that you have a scale of 1 to 10. And this emotion, this one is an 8. Okay, it's an 8 emotion, which means it's a big one. It's intense. It doesn't feel good. It's like a strong experience that that maybe it's an older one, and it just really hit you, but you couldn't process it at the moment that you felt it for some reason. Like maybe you had something you had to do, or maybe it came out of nowhere. Maybe it's grief from somebody who died, but you're the person who has to, be there for everybody, or you have to make all the arrangements. There's plenty of reasons why we legitimately don't process every emotion in the moment, and yet it's still there and it's waiting. So she says, what ends up happening is that for a lot of people, the feeling starts to come on, right? It starts to go into its wave, but they're not comfortable with anything beyond a certain point. So this feeling is now a 5. It's now a 6, and they're getting really nervous because this is a lot. And now it hits 7, and they're like, I'm not sure if I can hang with this. And now it goes to 8, but they can't stay with it. It's just too much. And our impulse is to, instead of just riding the wave, is to throttle it somehow. We distract ourselves. We go do something else. We take our mind off of it. We basically flee the emotional processing. And so what was an 8, we now kind of shove down, and we turn it into, say, a 2 or a 3. We make it a lot more manageable. And she says that the thing is that anything that's like a real intense emotion, anywhere between like a 7 and a 10, there was a study done, and again, the only one I could find was the study in Denmark. But she said there was a study done that said that if you allow the emotion to go all the way to the top, to crest all the way to the top, and this is like a big one. It's like, like I always think of like the big ones as like I'm like laying on the ground, step-stepping, and there's like bubbles coming out of my nose. She says that we can't, psychologically, we can't hang and hold that emotion for longer than approximately 8 minutes. Right? Like when we really feel like the 10 intense emotion. And once that happens, it crests, the wave crests, and it goes to the other side. And now we're on the down cycle of it. And she says that is a full processing experience. That one is complete. Now, you might have other emotions related to the same topic. You might have other emotions that are very similar to it. It might come again in a less intense, right, a style. And it might feel like the same one, but it's actually a different one. But she says that one is processed. That one's complete. And the takeaway is, if you throttle it, if you push it down to like a 2, you can feel that until the day you die. So what would have been an 8, a 9, or a 10, and you could have gotten it out of your system. And like that 8 minutes also has like the come up and the come down, and like, it's got the on ramp and the off ramp. And I'm imagining when you feel that level of anguish or anger or whatever you're feeling, you probably need a little bit of like healing afterwards. You're probably kind of emotionally spongy and bruised. So I'm not saying that it's like 8 minutes and you're good to go. It's not like a lunch hour emotional processing thing, but it's complete. You did a full cycle.
Yeah.
And so 8 minutes of, oh God, this is going to kill me, can save a lifetime of this thing hanging at a 2 and kind of trying to get your attention all the time and influencing your decisions and being brought into every conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So, introverted feeling, the reason why it's such an important function to keep your finger on the pulse of. I say this as somebody with ENTP preferences, by the way. The reason why it's so important is because it allows you to get release.
Yeah.
It allows you to no longer have these barnacles of emotions all over you, weighing you down. And I've experienced this where afterwards I felt like I was walking around with one of those X-ray robes or like the aprons they put on you when you're about to get an x-ray. On the other side, it feels like somebody took something like that off of you. So when you do full processing, the experience you get is release, right? You don't have this thing that's now pretending to be part of your decision-making, part of your identity. It was never part of your identity. It's not like this is who you are. This is just what you needed to feel. And once that happens, now you can be more in alignment with your true self because you don't have this thing that's like kind of clouding your judgment, clouding how you're seeing things. So I would say one knows that they've done full processing when they experience release. It's like catharsis on the other side.
Yeah.
And now it's complete. Now it's no longer infecting itself into all little subtle areas of their life.
So I just want to be clear that those are extreme emotions. Those are often trauma related or something that went off the rails that caused that to be stuck there. You have to process, and not all emotions are going to feel as intense or as expressive or as overloading the system. I think there's what you're talking to or speaking to, Antonia, is the nature of carrying all this unprocessed, intense emotion we've got to get through.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that in my energy work, there's also a little bit of a proactivity to this. So that release, I think that's the feeling of it. I think the other way maybe to express it is a reclamation of sovereignty would be the other way that maybe an introverted feeling user would experience this. So for example, in my energy work, when I'm doing for myself, I'm doing emotional processing release. I'm trying to find those emotions, for example. I'm trying to tune into them in my body and my emotional system, identify them, and then amplify them to the degree where I can isolate it and then release it like you're talking about through breath work and imagination. But there's another proactive element where I tune into things like the need for approval, a feeling of a desire for people to approve of me. And that doesn't feel like it's going to go all the way to a 10 and be overwhelming, like what you're talking about with anguish or something else that's traumatic. It feels like it needs to be almost reconciled and let go of to reclaim the sovereignty of, no, I can do what I need to do regardless of whether people approve of me or not. And that's a little bit different of an emotional processing, I think. It's a little more proactive. It's a little more subdued, less intense. And I think that's also valid to say that I'm going to feel a sense of relief when I go, okay, I know that I have this desire for external approval. I'm a social subtype. I know I've got that. I don't feel it right now in this moment. I'm not like worrying about it. Now, the moment I think about somebody watching this video or audio later, or listening to the audio later, I'm like, oh, wait, how are they going to receive what I'm saying? Now I'm tuned to it. Now I'm like, oh, I can feel that coming up a little bit. The desire for approval on what I'm about to say or how we've done this show, or did I see something stupid a couple of minutes ago? Are people going to disapprove of that? But again, it's not super intense. I don't even know if I could get it to a 10 because it's low grade. It's just it's the emotional equivalent of like a thought that just popped up. Well, I don't want to believe that emotion. Like you talked about with thought, don't just believe everything you think. Well, I don't want to just believe everything I feel. Like, oh, people are going to disapprove of that thing I said. Well, wait a minute. I need to go ahead and vet that. Processing that is to go, well, I could do it topically by the subject matter, or I could just let go of approval altogether as like just a category. And that's what I've chosen to do with my introverted feeling. Instead of having to take it case by case and go, okay, approval for this specific thing, I try to tune into approval in general and say, do I actually care if people approve of me or not? Like, is that really something that I desire or care about? Is it really meaningful to me? Is it a personal core value of mine that I should take into account people's approval or disapproval? And if yes, then at what threshold do I take that into account? Is it everybody? Is it just people close to me? Is it strangers? Is it the world at large? Is it things I say publicly on like social media or on a podcast? Or is it just things I say privately? Like, I need a lot more clarity about how I feel about this and create distinctions. And it gives me sovereignty to operate within those feelings that I've processed through. So in a way, it's not necessarily thought or belief. It's the feelings and the motivations I have to want to do something or not want to do something that I want to, I personally contend with categorically or very viscerally, like you spoke about. And moving through and processing that helps me refine, okay, next time I'll do it differently because I went through that. I did tune in. I actually do care how people feel about what we say on the podcast. I'm not just going to say anything on here. If I'm really honest with myself and I process through the feelings of that, I let go of the approval, but I certainly also am tuned into, it's not really approval. It's like I get more distinction. It's like, actually, I care more about the the benefit of it or the residual of it, the way somebody can tune into it and feel good on their side. They can feel successful or empowered by listening to our show. And so I'm kind of moving, the processing also is moving the emotion of like seeking approval to going, no, I have sovereignty to feel like I'm contributing and giving them something to work with. Very internal. It's very feeling based. But I think that's what's actually going on is we're trying to, introverted feeling authenticity is trying to determine, what do I really stand for? What am I really motivated by? What do I really care about?
Yeah.
And I actually don't care about this other thing. I'm told I'm supposed to care about a lot of stuff. That if I'm really honest with myself, and you too listening right now, you probably have been told you should care and it's core value to be, this is a cause I'll go to the death over. And if you really sit down and process that through, that emotion, that core value you have or motivation, you go, actually, that's something I don't care about at all. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We had an ESTJ student come through that experience happened. They've lived a life for a long period of time. And they went, I realized I didn't care about this life at all I've been living for the last 30 years. I care about something completely different. So taking the moment to tune in and go, is this something that matters to me?
Yeah.
Personally matters to me. I think that's also emotional processing.
Yeah. And who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned all that. I was kind of going to gloss over it because I think in my work, I noticed that people need a lot more emotional processing of baggage they're carrying around.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that's absolutely accurate. Like I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you didn't let me gloss it over. And I do think that we're saying something similar, but I think the way you're saying it is better. Which is, I said, you know that you've completed it because you feel a sense of release, and you said you feel a sense of reclaimed sovereignty, and I think that's the release is of something else jerking your chain, something else having the reins of your decision making and your choices.
Well, the release is just being out from under this constant low grade. It's almost like having a pebble in your shoe emotion.
That's distracting you.
I pick up the shoe, I feel it fully, I dump the pebble out. Now I can walk without that
that's right.
constant reminder of this strong emotion that I just need to get through. I need to just process what happened or process the feelings there or whatever that I'm carrying.
Yes.
What I'm talking about is similar, but it's ancillary. It's more about the refinement of what do I really care about in those.
Yeah.
And that's internally processing. That the only way to know that, because if we extrovert the feeling in the harmony side and we're living the feeling, well, if I'm too tuned into the group, they're going to tell me how I should be feeling and thinking about this. I don't really have my sovereignty. I have to go inward to know how I feel about it. Right. And this is what harmony users will report to us. I don't know. I know how the group feels about it. I know how I'm supposed to feel about it, but I don't know how I actually feel about it. I even might know even how I think about it. More than I know how I feel about it. I think a lot of harmony users would say.
Yeah. So you can see why both sides are so crucial.
Yeah.
Right. And when a person is only ever processing, well, you can get pretty self-obsessed, right? If you're only ever doing introverted feeling processing, because basically everything becomes about you all the time. If you're only living feeling, if you're only doing extroverted feeling, well, then you don't come into it at all. And now the danger is you're handing yourself over to everybody else and their experiences. So you need to both live feeling and you need to process feeling. You need to have a good idea of, there's two of them there, and we don't know which one is more important because they both seem kind of important, right? They both seem pretty important. So is it a 50-50 ratio? Well, nobody's ever going to do 50-50 because we're pre-wired for one or the other to be a preference for us. That said, the other side is just as important. So even if you are going to favor one side and do it more often, remembering that there's life to be lived and there is experiences to be processed, and that's with all of these functions. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just surrendering to the fact this is going to be a long episode. I know we need to wrap up here soon. Let's talk about disciplining the inner functions. And you might have more things too. So I might be out of order, but let's just talk about disciplining these. I think we mentioned it on the introverted thinking accuracy side of things.
Yes.
I think we need to introduce this here too, is that, and I think like if I tune into my introverted feeling or authenticity, I would say in the last year or so, I've been more undisciplined. I've been too indulgent with it. Like if I'm really truly reflective on the self, I tend to like, oh, and I'm feeling this, and here's my motivation. I bring like my internal process. I keep bringing it to the outer world, and I'm causing problems for the people in my outer space. I want to be here so much now because it's like, it's my co-pilot as an ENFP, and I want to be in this space that I've gotten a little sloppy with it. I haven't had it under as much discipline as it could be. And I'm actually recalibrating that right now in my life to go, maybe it's not important that I tell everybody how I'm feeling about this right now. Like maybe that's like, it was such a profound growth for the last 10 or 15 years and really tuning into that clearly if I want to know how I'm feeling or what I'm motivated by, everybody else would benefit from the same information, wouldn't they, Joel? And realizing, okay, that's not exactly what people benefit from or want or resonate with. And keeping that in check and realizing, oh, wait, I need to discipline that. Not everything I feel has to be expressed and worked on, especially in a public way or in a outward way. Like some things, first of all, I'm realizing don't even allow that feeling to start in the first place, right? Why would I even entertain that feeling? And one could say, well, you have it, so you have to entertain it. Well, no, you don't. Processing could also be, no, I've decided that's not what I'm going to be working with. Now, again, I'm introverted feeling. Maybe I've got more nuance or discretion here. Some other people don't have that choice. I think that's the thing I'm speaking to. I think that's specific to authenticity users.
Well, if there is a corollary to thought, there are some introverted thinking thoughts that have popped up that I know are unhealthy for me. And I go, oh crap, now they're inside. And sometimes they're hard to get out. Like, it's like, I'm having a hard time unseeing this one, but it doesn't mean that it's true or accurate. And so part of disciplining introverted thinking is also being able to identify sneaky thoughts that get in there and take root and are not healthy thoughts. And and then sometimes it's really hard to do the math on them because for some reason they're just sticky. So I would imagine there's an introverted feeling corollary, which is, this is probably not helpful to me. This is not a healthy way for me to be feeling.
Yeah. And I think, so I take introverted feeling authenticity and I go, well, what's the best way to help create some distinction? Well, it's to separate meaning from feelings, because the meaning of the feeling makes me it qualitatively changes the feeling. So I'm angry. That's the feeling. That's the emotion. I'm really angry. Why? The moment I ask why, and I bring a narrative or a story, a reason for that anger, well, now I'm applying meaning to the anger. I'm not just angry as an emotion isolated. I've applied meaning to it. And now I'm no longer in the realm of just introverted feeling or authenticity. I've added in technically introverted intuition or perspectives. I'm meaning making now. And so one of the things I've done is said, okay, I separate the emotion. I just deal with the emotion in its silo of emotion, which leads me to say, this is what it means to discipline your introverted functions, is to create distinctions around which energy of the introverted space you're in altogether.
Right.
Because we have access to all four when we go inward. Now, I'm wired to pay attention to authenticity. Antonia, you're wired to pay attention to accuracy. But we clearly have access to the other two or other three in there.
Yeah.
And they get messy in the inner space.
Yeah.
Because the outer world helps us organize. Like other people do, structures do. You kind of know what energy you're in or what you're attuned to based on the activity. If I'm climbing a tree, I'm most likely an extroverted sensing energy because I'm climbing a tree in that moment. I'm clearly not relating to somebody in an extroverted feeling or harmony way. I'm doing the activity that is in that field.
Although sometimes in the extroverted space, we also get like things are a little
We can combine them. We can combine them.
Like it's like, okay, so I saw a thing that needed to be done and I did it. Was that extroverted sensing because I took action immediately?
Sure.
Or was that extroverted thinking because I got a loop closed? It's like, sometimes there's crossover in the outside world too.
But we could all look at it and have a conversation around it.
Right.
And we could say, we could make distinctions together. And we could say, well, that was more like this, and like, in a general way, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't get as muddied.
Code it inside.
It doesn't get as muddied in the outer world.
Right.
But in the inner space, it gets very muddy.
Right.
Somebody's like, is this a thought? Is this a feeling? Is this a perspective or a meaning I'm putting to this? Is this a memory I'm having that has nothing to do with any of the other stuff?
That also carries meaning.
And when we get in there, it's like, whoa, it's all over the place. And kind of when we're in that vein, we want to go to the other places too. And we bring it all together because again, there's no limits to the inner space. Remember?
Right.
I have a proclivity to look for authenticity things, but I have no limits to bringing everything else in because it's timeless. It's boundless. Why not bring meaning in with my emotions?
Yeah.
What's the rule? Why would I discipline myself not to?
Right.
One might say.
Yeah.
So when we talk about disciplining the inner space, we say, we're not just disciplining the function we're actually talking about. We're talking about disciplining the entire inner space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you agree with this? You might not. You might say, no, Joel, you're wild. I do not agree with this at all. I'm not saying this is how it works. I'm saying this is what's coming up for me as we talk about it.
I think that is an interesting, I think that's an interesting way to come at it. I think that when it comes to disciplining the inner space, it's kind of, again, it's like, it doesn't matter what the routine is as long as you have one. I think there might be some of this in disciplining the introverted landscape that we individually play in. I mean, you could be applying introverted intuition meaning to your feelings, or you could be applying introverted sensing meaning, like you said this to me, and therefore, it's like, and then you're like a historian now, right? It's like, this is all the things that happened, and that's why I'm feeling the way that I am. And so, so getting good at recognizing when something else is encroaching, I think, is a very interesting. It's like a rule you're setting for yourself. Like I'm setting the rule that I'm going to be feeling separate of story or narrative. I'm just going to create that rule for myself. Somebody else might not create that rule, with the same type preferences, but have another rule that they've imposed that makes it so that they're not entertaining every feeling, or they're not especially the good ones that are the ones that are not good for them, or making it somebody else's problem. I think it's like there's a lot of different styles of government. There's a lot of different laws of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are better than others, but for the most part, as long as you have some sort of organized system, usually things are okay, right? And so I wonder if it's very personal, which is really interesting because I'm applying more of an introverted feeling. Like it's subjective. It's each individual gets to decide, and you're doing more of an introverted thinking. Let's make distinctions and separate these all out. But that's probably us trying to contend with how we're going to discipline the inner terrain.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also, notice I said discipline, I didn't say control.
Right.
Because what I see is, when I look at the world, if I step back, I look at a bunch of humans on the planet that are ever increasing their external controls over each other, constantly trying to control the resource, the movement, the like actual logistics and structure, right? More laws are passed every day, external laws that control our world and our environment. At the same time, humans are getting less disciplined on the inner space every day.
Yes.
We don't have a authority structure from religion or anything telling us like, okay, this is the kind of the code of being, the way we should move through the world. Our inner space is breaking down rapidly.
Yeah, we lack principles.
Yeah, and we do, to the point where people struggle even with self-identity.
Right.
Or who am I? What do I stand for? What do I don't even know myself.
Yeah.
Right? They're struggling with even self-identity because the inner space is just fizzling. And we used to have more, now that was projected from the outside world into our inner space, more discipline on it, more distinctions. And we had to adopt some meanings from outside of ourselves to get along in religious paradigms, political whatever it might be. But I would say that we're watching almost, it's a have and have-nots, not have and have-nots. That's the wrong way to say it. It's the polarization of more control in the external space with less discipline in the internal space.
Yeah.
I see this as a recipe for disaster.
Well,
I see it as a recipe for a lot of suffering with humans. Yeah.
Well, you can see the impulse to hand over even more power. If you don't have, if you have not, what's that?
The uncertainty of not having it disciplined. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have not done sufficient processing work, and even if you have introverted preferences, I mean, sufficient processing means living life, right? Sufficient processing means that you give it more material to process, because otherwise you get pretty certain of your opinions, or you get pretty certain of things that you haven't had the outer world give you feedback to go, yeah, that's not how that works. So sufficient processing means getting outer world feedback and then processing the outer world feedback as well. And the less discipline we have in the internal world, the less confidence we have, the less we trust ourselves, the more easily triggered we are, the less we can explain ourselves. And so then we look for an outside source to help us figure out the world, to help us figure out what we think or feel. I mean, it's basically like we turn ourselves into perpetual children seeking parenting, but our parents are no longer our physical parents. It's now like government entities, or, causes or movements or religious paradigms.
Yes.
Like we're looking for somebody to basically be our parent, and not realizing that, oh, actually that's my job. Yeah. My job is to parent myself. My job is to do sufficient living and sufficient processing.
Which comes full circle to the whole point of why we're recording this.
Right.
Is we believe it helps people to think in terms of seeing the distinction between living and processing.
Mm-hmm.
And our view is that not enough people are disciplining and processing their inner world. And there's so much power and sovereignty and personal empowerment there that as humans, we have so much more available to us, but we're so distracted. We're so avoidant. Maybe we don't know what to do. Maybe we're ignorant. We don't know how to go and process. But just imagine a whole world that tunes in and starts to realize these core principles. How that would change. It's this idea of one person changes the world. And I believe that because as we start to tune in and process, we start to feed into the external systems. It can't be fixed out there and move in.
Yep.
The only way to have it happen is to go from the outward or the inward out. And that starts with the internal processing part.
Yeah. And I'll also reiterate again the importance of living as well, to get outer world feedback to tell you where limitations actually exist as well.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, we need both outer world feedback and pushback, and we also need internal processing that helps us know who and what we are, for sure. So just as a quick, I'm sure these are I don't even know how long these podcasts are. They're probably hours and hours and hours. But
5-hour podcast.
I guess that's just what's happening.
I don't live in the external world, Antonia.
That's right.
This is an introverted space on this podcast.
Well, what ended up happening is you ended up bringing up interesting topics, and then we just ended up talking about whatever we did. So as a wrap up, I'll just say this. So if how do you know that you are living? How do you know you're living life sufficiently? When it comes to living sensing, extroverted sensing, you know that you're living it because you have a sense of aliveness. You have a sense of joie de vivre. You have playfulness. You enjoy moments in your life. You don't have to enjoy every moment, but you have to enjoy enough moments that make it worth it. So if you're lacking that, then you need to be doing more living with your sensing. If you are sufficiently living your intuition, so extroverted intuition, it means that you have possibilities, you have hope, you have trust that the future is going to, that you're going to be able to respond to opportunities and situations fast enough so that the train tracks will be laying in front of the train as it's in motion, that you will have novel ideas, that you will be able to think creatively enough to make it so that you can navigate your own space and quickly, fast, right? Responding with your intuition. If you have sufficient extroverted, or if you're living your thinking, so you have sufficient extroverted thinking or effectiveness, it means that you're making progress in your life, that you are making an impact that you want to make. You have systems that are healthy, that you are able to build things right in your world. And if you're living your feeling, you have extroverted feeling or harmony, and you are doing so sufficiently, it means you have good relationships. It means you have connectedness. You have a connection to your culture. Like you understand sort of like social etiquette, and you also have good connected relationships to the people who are close to you, not the fake ones, right? Like the real ones where you feel bonded with them, and love is a glue between you. So that's how you know you're living all of these functions. How do you know that you're doing sufficient processing? Well, if you're doing sufficient processing of sensing, so sufficient introverted sensing or memory, it means that you are experiencing reconciliation. You are experiencing that sense of things are resolved. And you're not just accepting, because acceptance can be passive. You're doing an active acceptance. And oftentimes, not always, oftentimes it brings a peace of mind, but not always. But as long as it has that resolution that you know it's complete, you've done sufficient processing. How do you know you've done sufficient processing of intuition? Well, you know that because you have direction, right? You are not as easily influenced by the outside world in the templates of your life. You have a direction of running simulations that are the most likely outcomes, and that helps you determine what your course of action will be. So, and the direction of the perspective that you should be taking. So direction is how you know you've done complete processing. For introverted thinking or accuracy, or when you process your thoughts sufficiently, you have clarity. You can explain and articulate the positions that you're in, that you have questioned your premises, and you have come to these opinions and conclusions with sufficient thought labor so that you do have a sense of clarity or transparency around what and how you're thinking. And if you have sufficiently processed your feeling, authenticity, introverted feeling, then you will have a sense of catharsis, a sense of release that also gives you heightened authority, like personal sovereignty. And that's how you know that you have done sufficient processing of your feelings. So all of these require time, and you're going to favor some of these. And I think the reason why, I mean, just to harken back to where all of this information starts to become clearer and clearer for us is in Personality Life Path, the program, the 8-week program that we run, where we go through each of the functions and help people understand what their relationship to the function is. Experientially, right?
No matter their personality type too.
Everybody has some money they're leaving on the table.
Yeah.
Everybody does. Everybody has
more capacity for something.
That's right. One of these functions is something that's kind of hanging them up. And if we can build a good relationship to each of them, and we can figure out which one needs some of our attention and attunement, then we can we can sufficiently live and sufficiently process our existence, right?
Yeah.
We can find what Carl Jung calls whole self.
I like to think of it like an elimination diet for your cognition.
Right.
We take each function in isolation, almost like you're trying to find like a food allergy or intolerance.
Mm-hmm.
We introduce it each week in its isolation experientially to see what your relationship is to that. Because some of them you don't have a very good relationship with at all based on personality type. And then some you're like overly confident with, and you got this really close relationship. And it's really interesting to see all the different types in the same week, by the way, attuning to the same function from their unique experience of it. And how some are just like, this is so easy. What's everybody having trouble with? Like, this is great. And they're really like, other people are like, oh my gosh, do we even have to do this week? Please, oh God, save me.
Yep.
And just that alone with other people in a tribe doing that together, a community, that's such a, well, it's rewarding for us, quite frankly. We learn a lot every time we do this cycle. By the way, if you're interested in Personality Life Path, you can head over to personalityhacker.com/lifepath. The time it's recording, we have some classes going and stuff, but you can check the schedule for one of those programs. I think it would be life-changing for you.
Yeah.
If you're ever interested in really going down the rabbit hole, not just in theoretical understanding, like we geek out and talk about all these theories and principles and frameworks, but really attuning to the self and applying this in a real way.
Yeah. Really
tangible. I can't recommend Personality Life Path enough. So what's coming up for you as you're listening along? I mean, this is 2 parts now, pretty deep into some of these ideas. You haven't had a third microphone, but we want to hear from you. Come over to personalityhacker.com directly below this episode. If you could leave a comment, ask a question, or share your story. Stories are compressed experiences. We can get a sense of what's resonating with you, what's coming up, what's challenging, what is obstruction. Maybe you're having a challenge with something we said and it's like not resonating. You like to further discuss it with people in the community. I think that's a great place to do it under this episode. So come over and make your voice heard.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. If you leave a rating and review on iTunes or whatever you're using, Spotify, that helps us out a lot. I made a very strong appeal for it in the last episode, so I won't do that again, but I love a good review.
Pause this, go listen to her appeal there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
The end.
That's right. You could be watching us on YouTube. We have a video podcast. If you're watching us right now, you can subscribe, and hit the bell to let you know when future episodes are out. And as Joel said, keep your finger on the tabs of our Personality Life Path program. It's an 8-week mentorship program that culminates in a live event, and it is game changing. I would say that since we stumbled upon it and started doing it, I would say that it is, I would use the official word Dharma for me. Yeah. This is my Dharma, is doing Personality Life Path, and I think everybody should go through it. I think it is revolutionary and game-changing for the majority of people who go through the program. So I highly recommend you go check it out, personalityhacker.com.
Yeah, /lifepath.
/lifepath.
My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
We'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.